reporter our Tom Homan joins us now to continue the conversation. Tom, thanks for being with us here today. If 600,000, 605,000 was the number last year, and you're saying we haven't seen anything yet, what kind of numbers can we expect this year?
Well, look, like I said, we're in the process hiring 10,000 more agents. I think we got about 7,000 on board. We got 3,000 in pipeline through the academy. So we have more resources to do this work. And we're going to continue doing that. We're going to continue to surge resources, especially to sanctuary cities, because we know we have a problem there. So I expect the numbers to increase while the border numbers continue to decrease.
How many deportations, Tom? How many we need to set this country's population back to where it's actually a country of legal citizens?
Millions. Look, you know, they keep using the term, I see it all the time, 12 million illegal aliens in the country. We used 12 million 25 years ago. I think it's well over 20 million. So, we're going to do everything we can to arrest as many people we can. And as for the president, priorities of public safety threat, of course, because they're the biggest danger to the community. But anybody in this country is here illegally. We're looking for them. We're going to arrest them and deport them.
Tom, what do you say to people that say you can't logistically deport that many people?
I'll give one hell of a shot. Bottom line is we're not going to give up on President Trump's promise to the American people of mass deportations. And look, we're going to do the best we can to enforce immigration law, and that's what we're doing now. We already had a record this past year. The prior record was the Obama administration in 2012. I actually got an award from President Obama for that. Of course, they don't want to admit it now. That was 409,000. We blew that out of the water, and we're going to blow it again out of the water next year. So, for those who say we can't possibly move that many people, we'll see. We're going to give it our best shot and try as hard as we can to enforce immigration law, because we need to send a message to the whole world that, for the non-criminals, most of them here are non-criminals, right? But we need to send a message to the whole world that it's not okay to enter the country illegally, which is a crime. Not okay to ignore a judge's order. Just don't commit another crime and we're not looking for you. That's not the message we're sending. If you violate the laws of this country and you're here illegally, we're looking for you.
Okay, so that would include New York if they pass a law to make it a sanctuary city. Governor Kathy Hochul is saying this about you. Watch.
Their overreach and their excessive engagement in activities far beyond what was ever promised by the president or what Tom Homan has told me. He said the era of the surges is over. Told me that, sat in my office and said that, because I said, we don't want to have this happen in New York. So now they're going to backtrack on that as a threat to me, trying to threaten the governor of the state of New York. And I don't take well to threats. They're going to find that out. No, I don't need to call them. I think I know where they stand and they know where I stand. Need comes to it, I'll make the call. But the president said he would not do this, and I'll take him at his word.
What's going on? Are we about to have a standoff in New York?
Yeah. I'm deeply intimidated now. The bottom line is I did have a discussion with her. I had a discussion about letting ICE agents in our jails. We have 287G agreements with some of the bigger counties in New York. The state legislature herself are proposing legislation should be signed any day that ends those 287G agreements, that locks us out of every jail in the state. Sheriffs can't even rent us beds. So when we arrest an illegal alien state in New York, rather than detaining them in the local community, in the local jail, now she's going to force us to fly them out of the state to either Texas, Arizona, or state we have detention facilities. How is that helpful to the immigrant community? For a whole year, she talks about how Trump administration should be concentrating on the criminals. Well, how do you square that while locking us out of all the jails? Ending 287G agreements we've had for years. Having a green light law where ICE and Border Patrol can't even run a license plate number of a New York State license plate to understand the history of that vehicle and what criminal activity they're involved in. So she's talking out two sides of her mouth there. So what our discussion was what happened in Minnesota. And we discussed, look, ICE is focused on targeted enforcement operations, of course, prioritizing the worst and prioritizing those public safety threats first, as President Trump promised. And that's exactly what we're doing.
What stood out in this interview was not really the tone, but how direct Tom Homan was about the administration's immigration plans. Usually when politicians talk about deportations, they focus mostly on violent criminals or border security in general terms. But here, Homan made it very clear that the goal is much broader than that. He openly said the administration is preparing for mass deportations on a scale larger than anything seen in recent years, and he repeatedly emphasized that no one is off the table. That is probably the line that will get the most attention from both supporters and critics. Because for years, immigration debates in the United States have centered around whether enforcement should focus only on people with criminal records or apply to everyone in the country illegally. Homan's answer was clear. He said public safety threats remain the priority, but he also said anyone in the country illegally could potentially face deportation. Another important part of the interview was the numbers he mentioned. Homan talked about hiring 10,000 more agents and said the administration expects deportation numbers to increase even further next year. He also compared current enforcement numbers to the Obama administration, pointing out that deportation records from that period have already been surpassed. Whether people agree with the policy or not, it is obvious the administration wants to show voters that it is taking a much more aggressive approach on immigration enforcement. The conversation around sanctuary cities was also a major focus. Homan argued that cities and states refusing to cooperate with ICE are making enforcement more difficult and, in his view, less safe. His argument was that when local jails do not cooperate with federal immigration authorities, ICE agents have to conduct more operations in neighborhoods and public areas instead of picking people up directly from jails. He presented that as both a safety issue and a resource issue. The exchange involving New York Governor Kathy Hochul was probably one of the more politically significant moments in the interview. Hochul accused the administration of overreach and suggested that promises previously made about immigration enforcement were changing. Homan pushed back strongly on that criticism and defended the administration's strategy. He also suggested that if states continue limiting cooperation with ICE, the federal government will simply increase operations in those areas instead. One thing that became clear throughout the interview is that the administration sees sanctuary cities as one of the main obstacles to its immigration agenda. Homan repeatedly returned to that topic and specifically mentioned states like New York as places where enforcement could become even more aggressive in the future. That likely explains why immigration is quickly becoming one of the biggest political battles again heading into the next election cycle. There was also an interesting moment when the discussion shifted to the idea of amnesty. The interviewer brought up reports and previous comments suggesting there may have been discussions inside the administration about possible legalization options for some undocumented immigrants. Homan immediately rejected that idea and said both he and President Trump oppose amnesty in any form. He clarified that conversations about immigration legislation happen regularly in Washington, but he insisted that legalization is not part of the administration's current direction. What makes this interview important politically is that it gives a very clear picture of where immigration policy could be heading if these plans continue. Supporters of stricter enforcement will likely see Homan's comments as proof that the administration is serious about border control and immigration law. Critics, on the other hand, will probably view these plans as too broad and too aggressive, especially when they hear phrases like millions of deportations being discussed openly on national television. The overall tone of the interview also showed how confident the administration appears on this issue right now. Homan did not sound cautious or uncertain about the backlash these policies might create. Instead, he repeatedly framed the issue as enforcing existing laws and argued that the administration is simply doing what it promised voters it would do. At the same time, this debate is clearly far from over. Questions about logistics, legal challenges, state resistance, and the economic impact of mass deportations are all likely to become major political topics in the months ahead. Sanctuary cities, federal enforcement powers, and immigration reform are now colliding in a way that could shape national politics for a long time. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. Do you think stronger immigration enforcement is necessary right now? Or do you think these policies are going too far?